Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's yet another video in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive Series. My number 5 team, the Philadelphia Eagles. It pains me as a Giants fan to rank them this high, but it is fair. The math doesn't lie. It keeps me unbiased to a degree. It keeps me unbiased. Make sure to like and comment in the comment section below what your thoughts are on the Philadelphia Eagles and what you think of this video throughout as you're watching it, and my grades. There certainly will be some controversial grades here. I'll open up right now. Perhaps you'll be not so enthused with my quarterback ranking here. I think there's sort of a hot and cold aspect to that ranking. And then the running back room. Not nearly as high on it as people in the community are. Mostly because I lived as a Giants fan the Saquon Barkley final season in New York. And I saw every snap he took, and I feel uniquely qualified to grade him compared to maybe some other people who perhaps only saw some of his best moments and not so much the issues that he had all year that really had nothing to do with how porous the offensive line was for the New York Giants, which in all fairness it was. We'll talk about how I feel the offensive line of this team and how good it is will perhaps make him look better than what he actually is and what is capable of being and what his ceiling actually possibly is. They made all the cuts already from the looks of it. Most of them, it looks like they've cut down completely to 53-man rosters. This will be the first video where I've been able to at least take that into account. So you'll see some differences in the slides for those of you that have seen previous videos. This video will probably run a lot faster because of it. So, check out the time below and it'll be in comparison to the others. It'll probably be a little shorter. On the defense side of the ball, they're a lot younger. Never mind shorter. A lot younger. To a degree, maybe shorter. I don't know how tall Cooper DeJean is. All power to the white corners of the NFL, making a resurgence there with him and Riley Moss. How about that? Reed Blankenship at safety. How about it? How about it? We're making a comeback. We're retaking the defensive back position. Kind of. We're now probably 0.75% of them in the NFL as opposed to 0. How about it? How about it? How about it? We're coming back. And it sucks that it's on the Eagles, but whatever. I like Cooper DeJean. I thought he was a great pick. Quinyon Mitchell, they've thrown a lot of assets at that cornerback room, getting the very controversial Isaiah Rodgers, converting James Bradbury, another former Giant, to safety after a poor season last year, hoping that Darius Slay can bounce back. They kept him at outside corner. Adding Jeremiah Trotter Jr., the feel-good story of the draft, kind of like Joey Porter going to Pittsburgh previously, the previous draft before that. I really like that they signed Bryce Huff. He does got one-year wonder sort of written all over him, though, but he's got great compliments with Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, all name Hall of Fame. And then the interior guys, particularly Jalen Carter, who in this new system is primed to have a great season. And what's that new system? It's the Fangio system. Because Nick Sirianni kind of threw out the inexperienced coordinator strategy he invoked a year ago when everything fell apart. And he went and got two very experienced ones. And we'll start with that coaching staff right now. Now, this is tied for 7th for me for coaching staff. And I feel like this ranking really depends on just how you personally feel about the head coach Nick Sirianni above everything else. He did take a step back in terms of what I believe his leadership projection could be. They fell apart last year. You can blame it on them not having, the health on their side, that age maybe caught up with them a bit. You could also look at it that they lost their 2 coordinators and they kind of thrust guys in there who didn't have much experience at that. And I feel like that is sort of what has been blamed here because they did bring in 2 very experienced coordinators. We'll start with the offensive side of the ball. That's Kellen Moore, who has had a lot of success in Dallas. He was in Los Angeles with the Chargers just last year. He is my 6th ranked offensive coordinator. I think Kellen Moore has been more than proven to be a productive offensive coordinator, especially during his time in Dallas. He was sort of looked at and projected to be the next head coach of the Cowboys before he had to leave there under the Mike McCarthy era and sort of just got out on his own. And now in Philly, it's third team in 3 years. I think that this is going to be a proving ground for him, especially because he's getting a quarterback that's not a overly traditional passing quarterback like Jalen Hurts, and it's a really different type of weapons than what he has had before, and it's going to require a different type of strategy based upon that. This is another great offensive line he's going to have a chance to work with that has seen some guys age out recently and is probably going to see some more over the next year or two. But it'll be interesting to see how long Kellen Moore actually lasts in this role, because I feel if he really excels here, he could be a candidate to be a head coach come next season. You know, Justin Herbert last year, he had the 6th best touchdown to interception ratio and the 9th most touchdowns in the NFL through week 14 before he sustained that season-ending injury. So it's not like he didn't do well as the Chargers offensive coordinator. I just think the Chargers in general were obviously very underwhelming as an overall team last year, which is why that staff got completely rebooted the way that it did. And I think Kellen Moore kind of took unwarranted shots to a degree because of the failures of Brandon Staley as a head coach. You move to Vic Fangio here. He's coming over to be the defensive coordinator. He's my 4th ranked defensive coordinator. His system has sort of been picked apart and bastardized to a degree by a lot of people in the league. A lot of people that were sort of under his umbrella. And it just kind of made the Fangio system look like crap. And nobody has been able to do it as well as he has. And we've seen it fail so often in recent years around the league, but it's so incredibly popular because when Fangio does it, they're actually pretty good at it. You know, Miami last year was 10th in total defense, and I believe they had 4 or 5 defensive touchdowns last year as well. They did damn good with Vic Fangio in control, and him coming over here. This is almost shadowing to a degree what I think Cleveland was able to pull off when they got Jim Schwartz in. You get a defensive coordinator who's like a high-end defensive mind, who the rest of the league, there's going to be no desire for the rest of the league to steal him away to be a head coach at this point in his career. And Vic Fangio, I think, is even more so that than Jim Schwartz. Schwartz was able to really reestablish himself last year as a top-level defensive mind. And I think this Fangio is going to get the real opportunity here to do the same. There's a bit of a youth movement in the secondary, especially guys converting from corner to safety, so he's going to have to work with all that. A bit of an aging defensive end group to a degree, and a very inexperienced and, riddled in question marks for the linebacker room in particular. So he does have his work cut out to him to a degree, but I think he's got a nice base of solid players to work with. Bryce Huff, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, even Milton Williams, a good little interior defensive line rotation there. You got Darius Slay, who's got experience. You got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's pretty solid. You got Reed Blankenship, who's been a solid player for them the last couple of years. So there is a lot of opportunity here for him to really succeed, but also he's going to have to start developing guys as well. There's guys that are in desperate need of development on this defense side of the ball. Rookie Jeremiah Trotter. You got rookie Quinyon Mitchell. Rookie Cooper DeJean. You got Nakobe Dean, who still needs to get to that next level. So he does have his work cut out for him. I would say even Jordan Davis is another one who hasn't quite lived up to the moniker that he was bestowed upon the year he was drafted. He's going to be able to bust out some defensive coaches here like Clint Hurt, who's got some defensive coordinator experience. He's going to be coaching the defensive line and senior defensive assistant, so kind of the right-hand man there. You're also going to have Roy Anderson, the cornerbacks coach, Joe Casper, the safeties coach. Bobby King is an inside linebackers coach, so they are going to be very distinguished in how they coach the linebackers this season. Kellen Moore's got not anyone really that jumps out for me on the offensive side for positional coaches. Jamel Singleton is the assistant head coach and the running backs coach, so there could be some type of significance there for that on the offensive side of the ball. But it's a group that they're going the complete opposite way that they did last year, where they did see so many failures in the strategic aspect of their game, being able to maintain leads, being able to sustain throughout an entire season. So now shifting to, I'm not interested in building coordinators like they kind of did with Steichen, with Jonathan Gannon. I'm going to get established guys. They're going to put their systems in, and we're going to try and win that way. I think that's a very good strategy from Sirianni, and I think it's a job-saving strategy from Sirianni as well, because there was a lot of talks about him being on the hot seat last year when 2 years ago he was in the Super Bowl. So it speaks to the impatience of the fan base. I think it speaks a little bit to the impatience of the office, because those stories don't really get out unless there's a smidgen of truth to them. So I think an impatient front office could backfire here on Sirianni, but I think he's put together a nice staff here that's going to protect him, insulate him, while still allowing him to be that rah-rah players coach that everyone on this roster seems to really relate to and love. And I think the fan base really likes him as well as a personality. So I think that all this is going to combine to create a really great opportunity for the Eagles to rebound from what happened last season, particularly at the end. Now let's go to probably the most divisive gradings I'm going to give out, which is going to be the quarterback and the running backs, but we'll start with the quarterback. Jalen Hurts, to me, as a pure passing quarterback, is tied for 14th with an 87 grade. I just have watched enough Jalen Hurts when it comes to him actually dropping back, throwing the ball, processing a defense, going through his progressions. He's definitely an upper half part of the league. Tied for 14th, there's a couple guys there tied for 14th. So there is a group there that hovers around the top 10. It's just very difficult for me to put him in the top 10 as a passer. I think as an overall quarterback, he's undoubtedly that. Because when you include his running ability, he's the third best running quarterback for me. And it's really tight. I think Lamar's sort of in a world of his own. But then you got Josh Allen, you've got, Jalen Hurts, you've got Anthony Richardson, who are all sort of part of this mixture, that second tier, where in any other generation they would be upper tier true game breakers, and he is. He's this great running quarterback. He can run between the tackles because he's got great power to him. That's why that tush push works so well. People talk about, it's because the running backs are just pushing him. To a degree, it is, the offensive line, the running backs working in complete congruity, but Hurts is a huge part of that. No other team in the league, probably the only other team that could run that tush push to any level of effectiveness, would be Buffalo and Indianapolis. I wouldn't even think that Baltimore could run it, because Lamar's not like this power guy. Lamar's like super finesse. He's more resemblance of what we had in Michael Vick years prior. Jalen Hurts he's a more athletic, like Dante Culpepper, if we're going back a generation to that Michael Vick era. Like that Dante Culpepper, who was very much a running threat, like even a previous Eagles quarterback like Donovan McNabb, in terms of like how he uses his power when breaking tackles, when maneuvering in the pocket, and then even when running. This is just the only concern, because you need to be able to effectively throw the football to win a Super Bowl in this league. There's a reason why Baltimore doesn't win Super Bowls, or hasn't with Lamar Jackson. They haven't really gone deep in the playoffs either. There's a reason why Jalen Hurts, he did get to that Super Bowl. He played great in that Super Bowl, but they didn't win. You can talk about, this call, that call, whatever. Calls go both ways throughout a game, and you can pick them apart all day. But what we saw last year in particular from Jalen Hurts was not a great passer. He wasn't an elite passer. He wasn't like a top 10 passer in the league. So he needs to get himself in that room. And maybe with Kellen Moore coming in, Kellen Moore is very used to working with a hyper athletic quarterback. You know, Dak Prescott, great athlete. Justin Herbert, great athlete. Kellen Moore working with Dak Prescott turned him into a really effective pocket passing quarterback, a really great traditional arm talent quarterback. If he gets the opportunity here to work with Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is susceptible to this type of coaching, the coaching up he can receive, I think Jalen Hurts can become that. You've seen Jalen Hurts develop really well since coming into the league, since he got that starting role from Carson Wentz when he was, bafflingly drafted in the second round and made Howie Roseman look like a genius after. He didn't come into the league as a good passer even at all. He wasn't like Anthony Richardson raw, but he was definitely not going to be viewed as a top 25 passing quarterback. And now this is a tremendous upgrade from what he was when he came into the league, and he deserves a lot of credit for that development. And he's figured out a way to, in a lot of games, hide the fact that he's still not that true elite passing quarterback, that he's relied a lot on the scheme, that he's had great receivers and tight ends and weapons around him, and that his running threat has also opened up the game a lot for him. It's made linebackers have to choose. It's made safeties have to maybe play a little bit closer, a little bit tighter. Made defensive linemen play a lot more disciplined and not just completely go after him the way you can do to a quarterback, let's say like Joe Burrow, where you can just pin your ears back and go. You need to be very disciplined when you're pass rushing a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, and that has opened up opportunities for him in the passing game that he's done a great job of taking advantage of, and it's maybe made him certain weeks look like he's a lot better of a passer than what he maybe actually is when you really break it down into the true details of the type of player that he is. He's also in no threat of losing this job. Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee are mostly just competing for a backup role at this point. Personally, I thought Tanner McKee completely outplayed Kenny Pickett in the preseason. I think Tanner McKee, with Kellen Moore there, I think Tanner McKee's upside. I was really high on Tanner McKee anyway. When he came out of the draft, I thought him coming to this team was a bit questionable, but it's really good to have this sort of switch up here where you can completely change out your entire team strategy, and it actually would make you more of a threat mid-game and in the short term, I think, against opposing teams that have been particularly preparing for the Philadelphia Eagles for that running quarterback. So they're gonna have to change a whole lot of things when you end up playing them if for some reason Hurts' health comes into question for a game or whatever. Tanner McKee, I think, would be the much better choice. But what you're getting from Jalen Hurts is this great combination where it does elevate him to being one of the upper quarterbacks in the league, but this is where you're really going to want him to live. Those read options, those designed quarterback runs, and that's what's going to keep your offense really moving and really help grow the entire overall offense, where maybe you can be a little bit more wide receiver weapons reliant in the passing game and just let Jalen Hurts make smart and easy decisions and not overcomplicate it, which could then lead to mistakes. And here you go, my most divisive ranking yet. And as a Giants fan, believe me, this is not sour grapes. This is exactly where I would have ranked him if he was still a New York Giant. They're the 19th running back room in terms of running threats. Saquon Barkley gets an 86 grade, still starter caliber, but what I saw last year from Saquon Barkley in particular was a running back who had drastically regressed. Now, you can blame the offensive line all you want, and sure, the Giants' offensive line was not good. But there were times where they were very good. And Saquon Barkley just didn't do what he was supposed to do. He was missing wide open holes. When he was going through holes that were created for him, he wasn't the same guy that he was when he first came into the league. And I think with Saquon Barkley, people are living in that era. And I think that this could potentially be the time where people are sort of brought back to earth with him and they realize it's not his rookie year anymore. He's not that back. because I watched him hit holes and not be able to make linebackers miss. I watched him hit the open field and be completely incapable of making defensive backs miss and outrunning them in the open field the way he was able to do with relative ease and smoothness early in his career. Now, with this offensive line, it's going to be very easy for him to almost manufacture a performance every week that I feel like so many other backs would be able to do. I feel like this was a great signing by the Eagles just because, you know, you're throwing money at a guy that hopefully will take you over the top. If you get the old version of him, you got to steal. And if you didn't, you're going to have a back where he's going to put up numbers that any other back would be able to put up in this offense because of how good the scheme is, how good the offensive line is, how you're always working with a numbers advantage because of Jalen Hurts. It was questionable to me that they kept only 3 running backs on the roster. Kenneth Gainwell, the backup, and then Will Shipley, the rookie from Clemson, as the third running back here. This was a questionable decision, mostly because you don't know if Saquon Barkley is going to be healthy this year, all year, getting a full season out of him. There's going to be times where Kenneth Gainwell is going to have to carry the ball a lot. It's just the reality of who Saquon is now. And I think Eagles fans, you're going to learn this the hard way. This is not the finesse by my projection that you think it is. Especially when you get to the receiving back aspect. Saquon Barkley's tied for 18th for me in receiving backs. If he does get the ball in his hands, he can be very effective. But he's suffered from really bad drop issues. His inability to quickly change the field and to make guys miss in the open field that he wasn't able to show last year will greatly affect his production in the passing game. Because so much of what made him a great receiving back wasn't the fact that he had great hands, because he never really has, but it was because he had this quick shiftiness, this suddenness to him that with all the lower body injuries just don't exist anymore. So I think you lose a lot in that aspect in him as well. I think Will Shipley and Kenneth Gainwell are good backups, though. I think if you can stay healthy, this could be a good 3-man rotation here with Barkley leading the way because you paid him, unfortunately. And maybe he gets back to where he was because your offensive line is so good, because the focus can't completely be on him the way that it was in New York. These are all possibilities here. I just think as a standalone player, talent level and effectiveness, he's not the same guy. And you're getting him at a point where I don't know that this is going to be as great as you think it's going to be. I expect, he's already going to get touchdowns poached from him by Jalen Hurts. I would also expect Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell has been well established in this team, well established in this franchise, well established in this offense with these players around him, that I think he's going to get a lot higher of a snap percentage than I think people are anticipating right now. I think especially as the season goes on, I think early in the year they're going to dedicate a lot to Saquon Barkley, and then as he continues to show that he's not the guy that they think that they got, that Kenneth Gainwell is going to get worked more into it. And I do think that as a combination in this room, they can be a really effective running back room statistically. I just think the system really suits them in that way. So now moving on to the weapons, we'll start with the wide receivers, and they have a great receiver room, 9th in the league. They just added Jahan Dotson, who I think coming into this situation where, he's wide receiver 3, but when you include the tight end Dallas Goedert, who we'll get to, he's really at best the 4th passing option. He's going to be often sort of put aside by opposing defenses during the week in preparation, and that's going to open up opportunities for him sparingly throughout the season. Now, Johnny Wilson, rookie wide receiver from Florida State, I actually kind of like him too. There's something sneaky about Johnny Wilson here that if Jahan Dotson struggles to pick up the offense, to pick up the team, because he is getting here a little bit late, I could see Johnny Wilson stepping in and getting some of that snap count, absorbing some of that. Britton Covey is another one that they kept. Aeneas Smith is on the IR right now, and he's a rookie. So they really only have 5 active wide receivers at the moment. They'll have possibly 6 if Smith comes off the IR at some point this year. I don't know that they'll take him off of it unless there's some type of significant injury to one of the top 3 guys here. But a great wide receiver room. A.J. Brown is a super complete wide receiver, super, fast for his size, but also super strong at the point of the catch. Can outrun anyone, can outpower anyone. He is a matchup nightmare for so many defenses in the NFL, and he is I can't believe he's even here, that the Eagles were able to get him from the Titans. Then you got Devontae Smith, who's like the polar opposite of him, which I actually really like how that melds together as a combination. Now, Devontae Smith hasn't lived up to that number, 12, 10, 11, or 12th overall pick that he was. I believe it was the 12th overall pick. And I think that's honestly just because, his size is a bit of an issue, of course, but he's been a wide receiver too because he's playing with one of the best in the entire league, a top 5, top 6 at worst wide receiver in the entire league. But I think he's a great number 2 receiver. And I think as Jalen Hurts continues to develop, and I think in this type of offense that Kellen Moore is going to be bringing over, it is going to open up more opportunities for him as well. Jahan Dotson, I feel he was very overdrafted when he came to the league for Washington. It was in a stacked wide receiver class where Washington just didn't want to miss out, so they probably picked him about a round sooner than he should have been picked, probably about 20 picks sooner than he should have been picked. And then he got lost in a really bad situation in Washington, never really played with a great quarterback at all. This is the best situation he's come into, so this is, again, to obviously a lesser degree, this is sort of like that dart throw they just did with Saquon Barkley, where they're like, let's get a guy in a much better situation with the players around him and his teammates and all that, and see if we can maybe get something out of him that he wasn't able to do in a lesser situation. You move on to the tight end here, and you got the 7th best tight end in Dallas Goedert. Now, they only kept Grant Calcaterra as the other tight end. Albert O is another player that's on IR. So they didn't really keep a lot of offensive weapons here. They kept 2 backup running backs, 2 backup wide receivers, and a backup tight end to keep 2 quarterbacks on as backups as well. So it's not the deepest group roster-wise, but the high-end talent level here is just so great. Dallas Goedert slides in. He should be, considering his overall talent level, for him to be the 3rd option in the passing game shows how great this group really is. Even though I find him a better overall player for a tight end than Devontae Smith is for a wide receiver, Devontae Smith is going to get more opportunities than Dallas Goedert. I think that it's going to help with Goddard's health as well. Goddard has had a couple of hiccups with his with injuries for a little bit throughout his career, but he is a great player that suits the skill set of the quarterback. When you have a quarterback like a Jalen Hurts, like a Lamar Jackson, you want guys who are really effective inside the numbers, less so than outside the numbers. And I think that's why, another reason why Devontae Smith hasn't ever really statistically gotten to the heights that I think people were expecting him to get to, but why a guy like A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert seem to always do it, because A.J. Brown will run a great crosser route. He'll run those tough, hard-nosed routes across the middle, strong hands, and that's where those types of quarterbacks really like to live, is in those areas. Once you get deep and outside the numbers, that's where you get struggles from Jalen Hurts. I think that's more suited to the game that Devontae Smith is capable of playing. So that's why a guy like A.J. Brown and then Dallas Goedert are going to just naturally statistically outperform a guy like Devontae Smith, even though I think Devontae Smith will significantly outweigh Dallas Goedert in terms of targets. Unless Jalen Hurts drastically improves on his pure passing issues, I don't want to say they're issues, but he doesn't improve on the weaknesses in his game as a passer, then the statistical output, the results related to the targets, won't match up. And Dallas Goedert will end up being that number 2 guy, with maybe even a guy like Jahan Dotson, if he can break out, could be sneaky up there with, and statistically be very similar to what you see Devontae Smith put out. But this is another one of those teams where really, even after all the cuts they made, it's an embarrassment of riches, and it's a, it's a fool's proof situation for any quarterback, especially one like Jalen Hurts, who continuously gets better as he's come into the league and played every year. Now let's move on to the offensive line, and we'll start with the pass blocking. They are 12th in the league. They did lose Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce would have put them probably into the top 5. But Cam Jurgens is getting his opportunity now, and there's no reason for me to doubt that Cam Jurgens won't, by the end of the year, look like a great center in the NFL. He just needs to actually get the reps in here. Landon Dickerson has been great once he got healthy, playing that guard spot. They got one of the best tackle combinations, if not the best, in the entire league with Mailata and Lane Johnson. Tyler Steen is in a bit of a position battle right now with Mekhi Becton, who they converted to guard this year when they signed him away from the Jets. I still think Tyler Steen's a better option. I still think he's a better player. You get him and Becton, who are both quite big to be playing guard anyway. But I almost want to play Steen there because I kind of know who Mekhi Becton is. You're kind of worried about his injuries and all that. And I just think he's the better option for this team this season. You get into the backups. They did keep 4 guys. Becton and Keegan are like these interior linemen. Johnson and Kennard are your tackles. They didn't keep Dylan McMahon. They put him on the practice squad. I think that's because their strategy at the end of the day would be, if Jurgens struggles, Landon Dickerson was a center at the University of Alabama. You kick him into center. I think it's a smooth transition in terms of his ability. And then maybe Steen and Becton are your tackles. Maybe Trevor Keegan gets an opportunity. Maybe Fred Johnson kicks into guard as well. I think that's the logic behind why they kept the guys that they kept. I think, Becton, they're testing his versatility. Steen's got some versatility. Darian Kennard's got versatility, guard to tackle. So they kept the versatile guys in there without taking just the pure center with them, because they knew they had Landon Dickerson, who's the starting guard / backup center in this scenario. But overall, I do like the depth here for passing with Johnson, Becton, and Keegan. Darian Kennard, he's just not become the guy that I was expecting him to be. I was pretty high on him as well. Just hasn't developed the way that one would hope. But his versatility, I think, really helped him, again, based upon the strategy that I feel like they were instituting here. You get to the run blocking, they're 6th in the league. They're great here. Jordan Mailata is probably the most complete left tackle in the league in terms of his pass blocking and run blocking. He's high level in both. You can say the same thing about Lane Johnson. Landon Dickerson is also great there. Cam Jurgens, I expect him to be great in the run initially. Obviously not as good as what they had with Jason Kelce. Again, if they had Kelce here, this is probably the best run blocking offensive line in the league. And then Steen checks in there, and that's because I just find him to be just that tier above Mekhi Becton. They don't really have the depth here for the run blocking they do in pass blocking. And when you're a team that is, I feel like they're still going to be driven by the run because of the skill set of the quarterback and because of the investments they've made in Saquon Barkley, that this is what is going to make Tyler Steen end up truly being the starting guard when it gets to nut cutting time, as they creep up to that game in Brazil. They might decide to go with the experience early in Mekhi Becton. That could be the deciding factor in all this at the end of the day. But I think if it were up to me, it would be Steen. It would be for this reason. I want to optimize the true strength of my offense that I can run early in the year. And then I'm still better off kind of like almost the exact same. Becton's a little bit better at pass blocking than Tyler Steen is, but it's not so significant as it is like a teardrop the way it would be in run blocking going from Steen to Becton. So you hope that the reps will help Tyler Steen. He's playing next to a tremendously talented Hall of Fame right tackle as well. So you hope that that can help him develop and get week to week, eventually be better at that skill as well. But I do think this is the best way to optimize the offensive line, like I said. So overall, this is my 5th ranked offense in the league, 7th best passing offense, and my number 2 run offense in the league. That combination that they have with the offensive line, Jalen Hurts. It's a really, really good offense that's going to be capable of putting up a lot of points week to week. Now let's go to the defense, and we'll start with the edge rush here. They're 10th in the league. Bryce Huff, Brandon Graham, just solid players. Bryce Huff had that breakout year with the Jets. Be interesting to see how that translates now to another team. We've seen it before. An edge rusher play really well. A defensive lineman play great on one team and then switch to another, and they're just not the same. They're that one-year wonder type. Albert Hainsworth immediately comes to mind, unfortunately, as that type of a player. But they are 10th right now. I do like the depth that they've been able to put together. I include Zach Bond there. He's sort of like a 3-4 outside linebacker, and that's based upon their depth chart. What they're going to be more looking at running is like a 3-4 style. So I think that having Zach Bond considered as an edge rusher outside linebacker rather than an inside linebacker. Currently he's listed as an inside linebacker for this team. I don't know how long that's going to last, especially with Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter there, and we'll get to them. I do like him part of this blitzing rotation as well. I think being a great blitzer will also affect this pass rush greatly. They have Josh Sweat, who's been sitting there as a solid rotational guy. I do expect Nolan Smith, the first round pick from last year, to get more reps here, to get more included in the rotation. Brandon Graham, he did announce this is going to be his last season. He is up there in age. I don't know how much of a snap count he's truly going to get. I think he's capable of being as good as what you'll get from Bryce Huff. I just worry about being able to sustain that throughout a game and throughout the year just because of all the mileage he's put on his body. Jalix Hunt is sort of a undercover defensive end for me here that they have. All name Hall of Fame right there. You look at them against the run, they just dropped slightly down to 11. This is where I do think Brandon Graham definitely won't be on the field, even though I do think he's the second best option. I think you'll see a lot of Josh Sweat on these early downs in particular. I think Nolan Smith is somebody who I think they can throw into these situations. He'll develop as well. I think he'll be more of the backup to Bryce Huff, though, while Josh Sweat will be more of a backup to Brandon Graham. And I think eventually eat up a higher snap count as the season goes on than Brandon Graham will. Zach Bond, again, as an outside linebacker type in this type of defense, like a 3-4 style outside linebacker as the pass rush. I think he can be very effective as well. And I think this will ultimately be what his role is on the team. Like I said before, you get to the interior, it's a great interior group. They're 14th in interior rush. The two Georgia boys, Jalen Carter, who had a great rookie campaign. You expect him to take another step up, especially in the style of defense they're going to be playing. He's going to be sitting in that Aaron Donald role on this defensive front. So I would look for a tremendous amount of success from him. Jordan Davis, I think, is a great compliment. Nose tackle, really athletic. Again, has to continue to develop. And I think as Jalen Carter gets better and as they have great depth and rotation at the edge rush room, he's going to have opportunities to be going up against guys one-on-one on these interior linemen. They're going to be bumping that center to try to help with Jalen Carter before they're going to try and help with Jordan Davis. Especially if Jalen Carter starts blowing up plays early in games, early in the year. Milton Williams is going to be a good rotational guy when they get to the early downs where they're tied for 10th. Moro Ojomo is another one. Off the field issues really hurt him, but I like that they've kept him. He's going to be a great rotational piece as well here. I think on early downs, we're going to see Carter, Davis, and Milton Williams, within Ojomo sort of plugging in and out for Williams or Carter throughout a game. But Jordan Davis seems to be the one that's sort of settled in his spot as that nose tackle. They don't really have another nose tackle type on this team here. Milton Williams is a little bit smaller. Jalen Carter is sort of like a base level defensive tackle. Marlon Tuipulotu, sort of same thing for him. And then they have Thomas Booker, who's sort of like an edge / interior defensive lineman, like a 3-4 defensive end type. So they don't really have a true backup nose tackle, which I think in these situations here, like the interior pass rush, that's where you could probably see Jordan Davis likely to come off the field, and Milton Williams will come in. Maybe they'll create a different little sub package here where it'll be Jalen Carter and then maybe Brandon Graham on the inside with Huff and Sweat on the outside. Mixing and matching guys around, seeing how Fangio handles that. With a great amount of talent here that he can mix and match, just missing some depth pieces here and there that could affect them in certain parts of the game. You just got to be smart in how you handle your rotation, particularly on the interior, and then you might not necessarily have to worry about running into those problems all that often. Now coming over to the linebackers, and they are 22nd in linebacker coverage. I'm a big fan of Jeremiah Trotter, man. He was my guy for sure in this upcoming draft, and I actually had the Eagles taking him in the first round a couple of times. I had them taking him in the second round a couple of times, and the fact that he continued to fall to them, this was the dream situation. It's a nice little heartwarming situation, kind of like watching Joey Porter Jr. go to Pittsburgh. This is just great stuff, and I feel like him and Nakobe Dean could become a real great combination. Now, they brought in Devin White, who currently occupies the top linebacker spot. I just don't see it. I think Devin White peaked in the Super Bowl year for Tampa, and I think he's been sort of going downhill ever since. That could be just me, but it just feels like he's not going to be the guy. I still like the idea of Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter being the top two linebackers here. I think it suits the Fangio defense. I think it suits this like 3-4 hybrid that they seem to be projecting to have right now. And maybe Trotter is slowly introduced because of his inexperience, but I think by the end of the year, you're going to be looking at like a defensive Rookie of the Year candidate, even though I know it's an edge rusher award almost, but the Rookie of the Year ones can seemingly go either way, more so than the straight up offense and defensive player of the year award. So I would look for Jeremiah Trotter to be in that conversation come the end of the season. And you hope that Nakobe Dean can overcome some of the issues he's seen early in his career here. You get to the linebackers against the run, that's where Nakobe Dean, I think, really steps up his game. But they are 25th. Jeremiah Trotter sort of even keel for me in terms of how he plays the run and the pass. But Devin White against the run is not something I'm interested in seeing at all. So I think that is ultimately going to hurt him because, like we just went over with the interior defensive line, there's going to be situations where they may not have the best and biggest combination of interior defensive linemen at their disposal on those early down situations, on those running situations. They're going to be rotated out and stuff. So you're going to want the better players against the run on the field at the linebacker position to sort of make up for those deficiencies. And again, I can't speak highly enough on Jeremiah Trotter. I think Nakobe Dean is primed in the defensive change here, the philosophy change, that he's going to have a real opportunity as well, especially with all the talent playing in front of them. Now let's go to the defensive backs, and this completely reworked cornerback room for the Eagles is going to be tied for 16th. Now, they looked old and slow and terrible last year. It was not great to watch if you were an Eagles fan. But they threw everything at them, and I know I got criticized for me projecting them taking one corner in the first round in some of my mock drafts. They went corner back-to-back first and second round with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Now, Quinyon Mitchell is going to start right away. I think DeJean's going to be like that fourth corner for them. Darius Slay, I think, still has some ability there. He, unlike Bradbury, is going to stay at corner. He'll be the outside guy. Isaiah Rodgers is the real wild card for me. He had a tremendous season with the Colts 2 years ago. He looked like a top-level corner in the NFL. Then he got busted gambling, and that suspended him for a full year. The Eagles still acquired him, and now he's going to get a chance to play. Can he get back to that level? That's the real question mark here. I think the upside of Isaiah Rodgers is tremendous. I think that it's going to allow Cooper DeJean to maybe develop a little bit more. I could see Cooper DeJean also being somebody who they use, in the nickel as like a slot guy. He can play a little bit of safety as well. I think he's got the versatility that can make him a significant part of this defense, even if he's not considered to be a starter this early. Quinyon Mitchell, he's got this weird potential to be like that Tariq Woolen, Sauce Gardner, high level performing rookie corner, especially with how good that defensive line is going to be. And in this Fangio system, I think that he can be somebody who can really show up here. Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks, two very highly touted in college, both ended up here with the Eagles, got opportunities last year, just didn't really take advantage of them clearly enough to prevent the Eagles from very blatantly and obviously attempting to replace them with Mitchell, DeJean, and then acquiring Isaiah Rodgers. Now, they converted James Bradbury to safety, so he's going to be like this third safety here, especially with Sidney Brown being on the IR. But Reed Blankenship and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in coverage, 7th best in the league. That's a great combination. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson can play that slot role. He can come up, be that 8th man in the box. Reed Blankenship, moving sideline to sideline in that deep third, has looked fantastic in so many games. Avonte Maddox is another converted corner to safety, but I think he's going to be more so the backup to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in these scenarios because he does have all that experience playing slot corner. So I would expect there to be like direct backups here for the safety group. Like Blankenship's backup is going to be Bradbury, and Avonte Maddox will be Gardner-Johnson's backup here. And then I think you'll see Cooper DeJean sort of working his way in and out, playing outside corner, playing in the slot, playing safety. You'll see him as a rotational guy for everybody involved, but probably will stick particularly to the cornerback room. But you can also see Avonte Maddox slide in at slot corner. I think that'll be a smooth transition for them. It's a great group to have where you have all this versatility, where guys have all this extra experience playing sort of everywhere, because you'll see Quinyon Mitchell playing the nickel as well. So you got Avonte Maddox, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Isaiah Rodgers. All these guys are capable of playing inside, and then Quinyon Mitchell can play outside. Isaiah Rodgers can play outside. Bradbury can come in, play some outside corner from time to time. Obviously, that's not going to be his full-time job. He did not look great in that role last year. That's why they converted him to safety. Then when you get these guys against the run, they drop significantly to 30th. And that's where the versatility sort of backfires a bit, because you have Bradbury and Maddox, who are converted corners and not exactly physical tacklers out there. Reed Blankenship is more of like a traditional pass cover safety. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is pretty good at this role, but he's still not like some top level run defender either. So I think this is where they're really going to get affected, is how their DBs help in the run support, and that's going to hold them back a little bit. I think the run support in general is going to be something that's going to be of a concern for this team, especially if they don't get the right combination on the field. They have a decent combination on when they get their absolute best players on the field, but once they start bringing in some of these backups, it's going to leave them very vulnerable against the run. So overall, this is the defense that is tied for 20th for me, tied for 13th in pass defense, and tied for 22nd in run defense. And we just touched upon why I believe that run defense could prove to be a liability for them throughout the season. Overall, my 5th ranked team, tied for 7th in coaching, 5th offense, tied for 20th in defense. That coaching staff for the Vic Fangio coaching group there for the defense I expect them to make this tie for 20th defense, outperform that ranking. And you expect Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni in particular with the offensive side of the ball to help this offense maintain that top 5 capabilities that they have. And there you have it, the Philadelphia Eagles deep dive video number 5 out of 32 teams for me. We're officially in the top 5, guys. It's been a long summer. It's been so long, and we only got a couple of videos left. I appreciate everyone for sticking around. Please subscribe to this channel. It would mean a lot to me. I've put in a lot of work, even if you don't agree with my opinions. And please thumbs up this video and leave a comment. Even if you're calling me stupid, leave that comment, but then thumbs up the video and subscribe so you can keep doing that to me. And it helps me out while you also bully me. And there's the video for the rest of the series surrounding me and my head, my big, dumb head. See you guys next time. Bye.